I'm a huge nerd for Fire Emblem. My first 10 out of 10 review on this channel was Fire Emblem Three Houses. I've spoken at length about how I wish Tokyo Mirage Sessions Sharp FE Encore was more true to the Fire Emblem elements of its crossover. In my sabbatical, I even played Fire Emblem Warriors 3 Hopes, and I expected to hate it because I didn't really like the original Fire Emblem Warriors, but I actually thought the balance of content was really good the second time around. So of course, I'm here today to talk about Fire Emblem Engage, the latest entry in Nintendo's timeless tactics RPG series. Can Engage escape the expansive shadow of its immediate predecessor? And how does it fare on the system compared to other tactics games? Let's find out. But first, please subscribe and click the bell to get updates whenever I publish new videos. I'll also link my Nintendo and Fire Emblem content in the end card, so stay tuned for that. Now that we've paid the bills, let's engage! This review is based on a physical retail release for the Nintendo Switch.
I live to fight again.
Fire Emblem Engage follows the player-controlled protagonist, whose default name is Alear. Alear is the legendary hero known as the Divine Dragon, who long ago defeated the accursed Fell Dragon. Upon victory, Alear was laid into a 1,000-year slumber, awakening just as the Fell Dragon is set to wreak havoc again. Through the power of the Emblem Rings, Alear sets out to save the realm once more. I'll go ahead and get this out of the way right now. I think Fire Emblem Engage has poor dialogue writing. The narrative itself is built on a solid foundation. You're a warrior, there's a big bad monster, and you need to accrue enough power to slay the beast. Simple, easy, classic high fantasy. But Engage's moment-to-moment beats are filled with cringeworthy characters and interactions. Almost every conversation feels tediously one-note, and the story lacks the emotional depth and charm that Three Houses wielded with aplomb. There's nothing wrong with a straightforward story, but Engage's plot is lean, to say the least. It's still an enjoyable narrative in a few ways. Again, classic high fantasy and that trademark Nintendo polish, along with Intelligent Systems' lengthy and impressive track record, means they could put together a halfway decent story in their sleep. But Engage's plot certainly does not reach the heights of past entries, and especially not its immediate predecessor. I personally rank Engage's narrative quality in line with all of Fire Emblem Fates, or any of the 3 Game Boy Advance games. That being said, my nostalgia for the GBA games admittedly makes me favor those over Engage as a personal preference. To Engage's credit, the game manages to leverage that same nostalgia by featuring a veritable rogues gallery of familiar faces from yesteryear. The experience is really bolstered by seeing Marth, journeying with Sigurd, reuniting with classic characters from bygone entries. It doesn't quite make up for the aridity of any given chapter, and of course it doesn't help anyone who is new to Fire Emblem. But for players with tenure, and/or anyone with any sort of investment in Fire Emblem Heroes on mobile, the Legacy allies can help fill the void left by any particularly bare-bones segment of the story. Is it possible to enjoy the storyline? Absolutely, and I did as a general statement. But more often than usual with Fire Emblem games, Engage had me exasperatedly rolling my eyes and waiting for the next chapter to kick off. On the flip side, the audio is demonstrably good. While I love Three Houses' unique and experimental score that combines EDM with orchestral arrangements, the traditional compositions of Engage feel classic in every sense of the word. I also feel like this style of music meshes better with the game design. Where Three Houses tread new ground in multiple ways, including its music, Engage's more traditional score fits the theme of calling back to past champions to aid you in the present. The voice acting is really good too. The Japanese performances are nice, as are the English voices. One thing to note is that unlike Three Houses, Engage does not have voice acting for every line of dialogue, and there are noticeably more general-purpose vocal stings this time around. It's not a problem in the slightest, but I thought it bears mentioning. While I may not be as wowed by this new game's scope of voiceovers, I'm still happy with the performances in either language. Here they are for comparison.
バンドレ、リトスの地にはこんな化け物が。いい
え、初めて見ます。平和なリトスにこのような化け物が現れるなど聞いたこともありません。
そうですか。では
戦われますか。さすがは神竜様、お噂にたがわず勇敢で。
いいえ、逃げましょう。
What are those horrible things?
Vander, are creatures like that common around here?
They're not. I've never seen them. Nor have I heard of such monsters appearing in Lethos before. This is a land of peace.
Understood. Well,
shall we fight them? As you wish, Divine One. You whose bravery knows no equal.
No, let's run.
Huh?
As per my standard, I played in English because the series' aesthetic is heavily European. And I just want to throw out there that you shouldn't let anyone give you grief about watching a show or playing a game in English. One of the baddest quotes in all of video games, and especially the baddest quote in all of Fire Emblem, is an English line of dialogue.
Pick a god and pray.
Visually, Engage is spectacular. This is probably the best part of the whole game. It's an immediate and noticeable improvement over Three Houses. The line work is much cleaner, the art direction is much bolder, the color choices are more eye-catching, and the world design is great. Where Three Houses opted to leverage its cel-shading-like aesthetic primarily for handheld play, Engage utilizes bold, clean, black outlines as a general visual design property, and the results are fantastic. I was genuinely surprised by how great the game looks up close. But even from afar, Engage surprised me. For example, of course the combat animations look really smooth, and the stylistic flair of the attacks has been amped up from Three Houses. However, if you zoom the map out, the environmental animations are surprisingly nice, mostly because they almost didn't need to exist at all. Check out these trees billowing in the wind, for instance. And the pre-renders look markedly improved as well. I quite enjoyed the pre-rendered cutscenes in Three Houses, even going so far as to comment about them in my Sakura Wars review, which had pre-renders from the same animation studio. But Engage's cutscenes just appear cleaner and smoother overall. On a side note, I even think the character dialogue cutscenes look way better than Three Houses, mostly because the characters in Engage don't look like they're chatting away in front of a big poster as a backdrop. It's not all fantastic, however. The lighting is decent, mostly because it's somewhat basic. Shadows are varying degrees of quality across the board, but nothing stands out one way or the other. Much in the same vein, reflections are generally decent, as are the water effects, all of which are mostly flat and simplified. Meanwhile, local illumination is practically non-existent. Objects that do, or should, or even just appear to emit light don't actually do so in real time. If nothing else, local illumination is baked into the environment. Global illumination looks good, and together with the more deliberate art design, we get really good looking moment-to-moment shots and stills. Further, the aliasing has been significantly reduced from Three Houses, because Engage actually does implement decent anti-aliasing to deliver a cleaner, smoother image in both docked and portable gameplay. Handheld mode targets a 720p resolution at 30 frames per second, and docked play is an upscaled 1080p 30. For the most part, the game stays at 30 FPS, which is more than can be said about Three Houses, and the resolution looks equally as consistent. Once more, the art direction is doing a lot of the heavy lifting here, leveraging several key visual strengths that Three Houses failed to capitalize upon. And whatever framerate issues do exist, as I always say, it doesn't really matter for a turn-based game like this one. Let's do the obligatory comparison, starting with handheld footage. Engage looks really great on the tablet, and whether you're playing on the Switch Lite, the OG model, or the OLED, this one is a visual treat on the go. And here's Engage on the TV. Once again, I'm very impressed. I didn't even think Three Houses looked that bad, but compared to its successor, man, it's night and day. I appreciate the time and effort that Intelligent Systems put into Engage's graphics and visual design. It truly paid dividends. Arguably, the gameplay has been given the greatest focus. This is one area where Engage hands down takes the cake over Three Houses. The combat is simply better. It's deeper, it's better balanced, it's more thoughtfully and thoroughly designed. Battles follow the traditional tactics-style gameplay, meaning it's grid-based movement with turn-based combat, and a lot of equipment juggling, stat crunching, and resource management from beginning to end. Fire Emblem's classic weapons triangle returns after taking a bit of a hiatus in Three Houses, so it's back to swords beats axe, axe beats lance, lance beats sword. While I liked the loose interpretation of this system in Three Houses, it feels really sturdy and perhaps even comforting to have back in Engage. And much like the more traditional music, this return to classic mechanics thematically links the combat design to this entry's titular mechanic: Engage. During the course of the campaign, you'll come into possession of various legendary rings known as the Emblem Rings. Each ring houses a champion of Fire Emblem's past, and by equipping a ring to a party member, that character may perform a soul unification ability known as Engage. This temporarily, albeit greatly, increases that party member's stats and grants them access to skills, weapons, and abilities carried by the Emblem Spirit. The more you use Engage, the stronger your bond with that spirit, and the more capable the party member becomes at leveraging that spirit's abilities. I really enjoyed the Engage mechanic, not only for the nostalgia, but because it's so highly customizable. You don't have to run Marth with Alear. For example, you can run Marth through Chloe and instead spec Alear into an archer-centric skill set. The game is even balanced for experimentation, incentivizing you to constantly play around with who should get what and why and when. You can also invest a special currency called Bond Fragments into ancillary mechanics of the Emblem Rings. For instance, the game has derivative rings called Bond Rings. While not as strong as Emblem Rings due to lacking an Engage feature, Bond Rings are also associated with other past Fire Emblem characters and grant stat boosts to party members when equipped. By expending a set number of Bond Fragments, you can craft 1 or 10 Bond Rings at a time, and, for a cost, duplicate rings can be melded together into higher ranking rings bestowing better bonuses. It's designed almost identically to a gacha mechanic, but it's not actually paid, it's free to use, and as far as I can tell, you can't invest actual money into forging Bond Rings. I admittedly found it weird to have what felt like a pay-to-play feature in a fully priced game, but I suppose it's okay since you can't actually buy into it. Equipping and using Bond and Emblem Rings grants you SP, and you use SP to unlock any associated skill within the Emblem Rings. These abilities can then be assigned to that character even when the Emblem Ring has been unequipped. However, to access these skills, you must first have a strong enough bond with that Emblem Ring spirit. Bond levels increase through usage in battle, but you can also pay Bond Fragments to automatically improve your Bond rating through training. For how simple the Engage mechanic is, there's a lot of different parts at play, and I think it makes for a really interesting and player customizable experience. I don't know if this feature will ever be used in another Fire Emblem, but for this one entry, I like it just fine. I just wish it was easier to earn some of its accompanying currencies. Aside from the Engage mechanic, other balances have also been made. You can partake in skirmishes in Engage similar to the free battles in Three Houses, although there aren't an unlimited number of skirmishes contrary to free battles. There are also friendly training sessions with allied nations which bestow experience points both during and after conflict resolution, making it more user-intuitive to level up over time. I didn't grab any footage of this next feature in order to avoid spoilers, but you can undertake special trials after a certain point in the story, and if you beat the trial, you'll earn XP. Weapons can be engraved with the mark of a past champion to bestow stat bonuses, and there are special items called Engage weapons that can be augmented to boost their capabilities even further, although this does require another consumable material type that is also slow to accrue. And outside of battle, you still have social mechanics, and third-person exploration makes its grand return. For anybody expecting Three Houses level social mechanics, I'm sorry to say that Engage has been pared back quite a bit. These interactions primarily take place at Engage's home base of Somniel. Here you can find items, interact with party members, buy and sell goods, train, raise animals, etc. Fishing makes its grand return, much to my delight, and has been mechanically overhauled for the better, in my opinion. It's also kinda dope that you can explore all the battle maps after an engagement to pick up materials, talk to people, and otherwise just world build. Plus, you can adopt animals from war-torn nations and bring them back to Somniel, and these animals yield you materials like eggs and milk. It's a simple mechanic, but I thought it was very sweet, and I enjoyed rescuing all the animals. You also have the ability to sponsor allied nations, and the more money you donate to them, the better the materials you can find and the greater the variety of animals you can rescue. Supports obviously return in all their classic Fire Emblem glory, and they're on par with the series standard. You still build relationships in and out of battle by fighting in tandem and doing activities together. However, pretty much all of the scenes involving the player character are, and I mean this in the nicest possible way, annoying. It's not the fault of the performances, but rather the writing. Everyone is just so far down Alir's throat because he's the Divine Dragon, and it creates this almost smarmy atmosphere across the course of the game. By sheer volume alone, there's a hint of insincerity that permeates all of these interactions, despite the fact that this insincerity doesn't actually exist in-universe. Even Alir is annoyed by it in the game.
I have a fan club?
Yep. Our mission is to support you. That's why I'm here giving you extra motivation.
Huh. Thanks for cheering me on. But could you maybe not do it so close?
You bet. I can stand back a little. 4, 3, 2, 1. Who's our favorite dragon? You! You! Y-O-U!
That didn't help.
Outside the vacuum of Nintendo's series, I didn't enjoy Engage mechanically as much as I did Triangle Strategy, and I'm a bleeding heart for the classics, so of course I have to give the nod to Tactics Ogre Remastered over Engage as well. But that's not to say Engage is the bottom of the barrel. I like this latest Fire Emblem more than Mario plus Rabbids, more than Mercenary Saga Chronicles, and more than Disgaea 6. Despite Engage's metaphorical rough edges, there's enough in-genre goodness to satiate a majority of players' tactics gaming hunger, and I think many players, including myself, will find the return of series-stable mechanics to be a delight. Fire Emblem Engage reminds me of the Fates games the way that Three Houses reminds me of Fire Emblem Awakening. Where Three Houses and Awakening were each at one point the best game in the series, their follow-ups forged a totally different path to avoid comparison. Engage doesn't try to have a massive engrossing story and world filled with deep, intricate interpersonal connections. It instead focuses on razor-sharp gameplay and deeper mechanical complexity while only minimally eschewing narrative depth. In doing so, Engage manages to stand on its own achievements as a flawed but ultimately strong entry in Nintendo's illustrious series. Would I have preferred a story with more teeth to go along with the strong gameplay? Absolutely. But Engage still manages to deliver in many of the ways that matter, and it's worthy of a place on your shelf if you enjoy tactics role-playing games. Just try to tough out the story content for at least the first few chapters. Also, this has nothing to do with anything either, but if Intelligent Systems continues to follow the pattern of amazing game followed by interesting game followed by remake, then that means we have a remake of Mystery of the Emblem / New Mystery of the Emblem coming out next, and that is gonna rule. Anyway, Fire Emblem Engage on Nintendo Switch earns a 7.5 out of 10. Thanks for watching, please subscribe, click the bell, and check out the content on screen. 見てくれてありがとうございます。ごきげんよう、さようなら。